Hello. Today I'm going to look at a couple of fairly simple cards which you could use as Christmas cards. This one for sure you could use as a Christmas card with the shiny glitter and a mirror card. This one you could also use as a Christmas card, or say you wanted to use it as a mail or, well, any sort of a birthday card or any other kind of card. You could put a deer on there or a camping scene or anything else. It's basically just trees. Let me explain a little bit about how you make these. They're fairly simple. Aperture in the front, and then you open them up and you've got the scene in the middle. Same here. Now these particular trees, this one was made with a Spellbinders die right here. It's a 2-layer die, so you cut the back layer. I cut the back layer in the glitter card, which is the outline, and then you layer the mirror card on top, and you get this beautiful tree. These trees are an Anna Griffin layering die. It's meant to be a Christmas tree. There's 3 different layers. So here's the background layer, here's the middle layer, and here's the top layer. When you layer them all up, they look like that. Really pretty. You can use them for Christmas trees, but you can also use them for pretty much anything else. Now this whole style of card, super easy to make. I just used a 5x7 card blank. Cut the aperture in the middle. Use your nesting dies to create one size bigger of a frame. What I did on these is I inked the background. So inked some sky, inked some mountains, stamped some trees, and glued the trees in the middle. And if you ink while it's closed like that before you glue on your frame, but after you've cut your aperture, you get this nice oval inking all the way through to the center. Then you just glue your trees on. Same with this one. Cut the aperture, do your inking and your stamping, glue on your frame, and put your tree in. Pretty simple. All right, so let me show you how I do that. Start with your 5x7 card blank. Here's my 2 nesting dies. Now, the aperture you want to cut, you want to use the smallest nesting die, and you just kind of put it in the center, and I just sort of eyeball it. Fix it down with some low-tack tape. Always try to tape your die and the paper you're going to cut away. I'm going to cut out that center, so I'm going to try and keep the tape off of the outside piece so that it doesn't get it sticky or whatever. Run that through your die cutting machine. All right, I've taken that through the die cutting machine. And use your pokey tool to kind of help peel that tape off. Now, if you just kind of roll it back, you're much less likely to tear your cardstock. So again, just get the edge underneath, use it to kind of pull it up, roll it back like that, come right off. Take that out. Now, I always save these pieces because you never know when you want it to stamp a sentiment on there or something, so I always keep those. Now, again, you want to start doing your inking, but remember what I said, you want to close it up so that when you're inking, you actually are inking onto the inside piece too. Let me get a little piece of scrap paper to go underneath so I'm not messing up my cutting mat. All right, now the easiest way to start is you want to start with the mountains in the background. So what I've done is I've just taken a piece of craft card and I've cut out sort of a mountain shape and then sort of a wavy shape on the other side. So what I like to do, this is going to be the ground in the foreground. So if you look at this one, you've got mountains here, and then it kind of fades into just sort of a little bit of a hilly ground. That's what this piece is. So put that there. And here's the other half of this. So see, as when I cut that, it actually was this way. Just comes apart. And we're going to make our little mountains about there. and you just start inking. Now, I use the Harmony water reactive dyes to do my inking. I prefer those because I think they blend nicely. So you just want to kind of hold that in place. You can kind of tack it down if you want, but you don't have to. I tend to just kind of hold on to it. If it moves a little bit, it's not that big of a deal because you can kind of put it back. Just get a little bit of ink on there. Kind of take some off just so it doesn't, and then just gently blend. And you just want to kind of make your mountains. And as you're coming down from the top and up from the bottom, so that you're not rubbing underneath your stencil. Now see, I moved that, but it's pretty easy to just line back up. Put your hands on there. I'm trying to do this without blocking the camera. And if you get a little, see how I've got like a little round spot there? Just kind of keep going over it. That's what I like about the water reactives, is it'll just blend right out. We're gonna go over here, do this side. And if it moves a little bit and you get kind of a little bit of a blurry line, not that big of a deal because it's kind of an artistic impression of what the mountains are going to look like anyway. So that looks pretty good. Now in this foreground, we want to put some color on, but we want it to be a little bit different from the green topaz in the background. So I use Frosty Jade, which is the next color, just lighter than the green topaz. And basically you want to just start in the green topaz and sort of blend down so that you don't have, you can still kind of see that line, but it's not harsh. So just keep blending away, kind of at that line and down. And a lot of it's going to get covered up anyway because you have tree stamping and then you're going to have a tree on top of it. So it's not, don't worry about it if you don't think it's perfect. But now sometimes it's nice to put a little bit of kind of terrain like in there. So again, I can take this, put this on, and you can kind of put it in angles or however you want it. I kind of like to do like a little bit of an angle, and again, kind of go up from there so you're not, it makes it easier to hang on to the stencil or the handmade stencil there if you're going up like that. Okay, now see, you got a nice line there. Now come in and do the rest with just a light, kind of a light touch. Now, see, because I did that with that aperture already cut, when you open it up, you have a nice little mountain in there. So I'm pretty happy with that. But that white, that stark white at the top is just too much. Needs a little bit of a sky. So bring in some blue. And on these, I used the lightest blue, but I'm going to try the ocean blue, which is just a little bit darker, so I get a little more color to it. I think I'll like that better. And if you noticed, I changed little dauber and sponge ends with each color. I keep mine on the back of my ink pads. I actually have, most of them I have a little Velcro, and so they just stick right on there, which is kind of nice. So again, this is the ocean blue. and just do it lightly so that it's not overwhelming. And if you get a little bit of a variation of the white and the blue, it's kind of good because it kind of makes it look like clouds. I think, at least. My artistic impression. Oh, I got that one kind of. Not too hard of a touch on that one right there. So blend that out. Again, hold it down so that you don't get the ink underneath. You get a nice aperture on the inside. Yeah, I think I like that blue a little bit better. It's darker, but it kind of gives you a nicer contrast, especially on the inside. So when you open it up, you actually look like you've got some sky there. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm done with my inking. I got my inky fingers. Now I need to cut my little frame to go around the outside. And I'm gonna use this tree, but I'm gonna cut it not in sort of a Christmassy look, because I'm thinking I'm gonna use this for a birthday card for someone who's really into like outdoor stuff, camping and backpacking. So I'm gonna use the Spellbinder's tree, and I'm gonna use a couple of green, these two greens. So I'm gonna use this dark green for the frame. Now, to do that, let me set this to the side. Now to do the frame, you want to put your nesting dies on. Start with the big one, and I cut them both at the same time. You can cut the big one first, or the small, cut one and then the other, but I find that it's pretty easy to cut both. And you just want to get them kind of equidistant apart. And then this time, I actually am going to tape over both dies because I don't want those things to move. And the reality is the only piece I'm going to use is this little inside sliver, and it's not going to get it's not going to have a problem. Now the other thing I want to cut out of the dark green is the background of the tree. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it at the same time. I'm going to tape it down because you don't want to take any chances that this die slips on top of that die, and then you'll ruin your nesting dies and your tree die. So let me cut this so I don't have to run all that paper through the die cutting machine. And just to save myself some time, I'm going to go ahead and cut the inner piece of the tree out of this lighter green, and I can run that through the die cutting machine at the same time because I have a 9x12 plate, so I'll just trim that down. And I'm going to tape that in place too, because if I don't, I know it'll slip, and then I'll just have to cut it again. So you tape that down. I'm going to run these through the die cutting machine. I'll be right back. See, I had to stack them on top of each other to fit in there the quickest. Let me peel this tape off. So there's the background of my tree. Peel this tape off, and let me get my frame. And again, I'm going to save this piece because this is a great matte and layer for if you're doing sentiments or something. You cut the smaller one on white. It's a great, so that's recycle. Now here's the inside of the tree. Oh, and you know what I forgot? I did this the first time too. It cuts the inside of the tree, but it doesn't cut the outside. So you gotta cut this piece too. And I forgot about that. Okay, well, and I cut that too small, so I'm gonna have to do that again. Yeah, see, I did this the first time I made this too. I forgot that if you look at this die, this has a cutting edge all the way around, so it cuts that outside shape. This die just cuts the little inside, but see, all of this stuff is still attached. So if you don't cut it with this die, you get this, which doesn't really help. So let me do that again. So again, you want to layer those dies up. Make sure they're not touching or overlapping in any way, anywhere, because you'll ruin your dies. Tape them both. Make sure you get the tape on both pieces and run it through the die cutting machine. Okay, that's better. Now let me take that tape off. And we'll get this card put together. That's better. Now, be careful when you peel this off. You can see how it's cut and it's got lots of little pieces. So you want to kind of very carefully peel that off so it doesn't tear. Now this is all cut, but you just gonna have to go and poke all the little pieces out. So, all right, got all the little pieces out. Let's clean up my mess. I'll clean out my die later. Make sure you always clean out your die before you put it away, but I'll do it later. You don't have to watch me do that. Now, to attach this to this, it just layers right on top of that, like that. Now, the way that I personally like to do it, and some people say not to do this, but I would do it. I just use some nice tacky glue, and I put it on my hand, just in a thin layer. Now, be careful if you're at all sensitive, test it before you do this, and then just kind of lay the die cut onto the glue. Don't push it in, just kind of let it touch all the way down. And rotate around so it's in different spots. And then you can just layer it up. And it's wet glue, so you get a little bit of wiggle time. But it's tacky glue, so it'll stick pretty quickly. And once you get it all in the right place, there you go. Now the glue on your hand, it'll just dry. I've tried to wipe it off when it's wet, and it's actually harder. If you just wait till it's dry, you can just kind of peel it off. All right, so now we come back to our card. We've got our frame. It's gonna go around here. Make sure to get the right side. And I'm just gonna glue that on. Have a little precision tip tacky glue. Just do a thin line all the way around. Just like that. Line it up. And again, you got a minute or two to kind of get it lined up. But since you used your nesting dies, it should fit exactly right. And I found if you put your fingers like that, it's the easiest way to get it to line up. That looks good. Now, to place your tree in the right place, what I do is I put it in from the outside. So put it in, kind of close it, and then maneuver it around to where you want it. It's probably about right, like maybe about right there. Then you can open it up, and then you know where it goes. Now you can put it on like with foam pads if you want it dimensional. I do like a little bit of dimension, but I'm not going to use the foam pads. So what I have is I have Kalal 3D all-purpose glue. It's kind of like a gel, and it's in this little syringe. Pull the little plug out because every time after you use it, it gets a little bit dry. Now remember where you put that, and then just kind of squeeze some on. I'll just put a few globs here and there. And this gives it a little bit of dimension, not as much as like a foam pad, but it gives it a little bit, and you get a little bit of wiggle time. So you can kind of put it back in there where you think but don't push down hard, otherwise you lose all your dimension. But you do have time to kind of close it and wiggle it a little bit. So I think that's about right. And there you go, all done.